Thanks for joining us on episode 1650 of the Inspired Stewardship Podcast.
I'm Andrew Davies. I challenge you to invest in yourself, invest in others, develop your influence, and impact the world by using your time, your talent, and your treasures to live out your calling. Having the ability to listen more than you talk is key. And one way to be inspired to do that is to listen to this, the Inspired Stewardship Podcast with my friend, Scott Mater. Being a better listener is one of those things that at one time feels obvious and simple and also is extremely hard, right? It's extremely hard to actually be a great active listener. And the reason improv is the best way to practice is because if you're improvising with other folks and someone stops listening, even for 10 seconds, it is so obvious to everyone.
Welcome and thank you for joining us on the Inspired Stewardship Podcast. If you truly desire to become the person who God wants you to be, then you must learn to use your time, your talent, and your treasures for your true calling. In the Inspired Stewardship Podcast, you will learn to invest in yourself, invest in others, and develop your influence so that you can impact the world.
In today's podcast episode, I interview Andrew Davies. I ask Andrew about why improv is so important to leadership and to sales. I also ask Andrew to share with you how improv and coaching are related. And Andrew also shares with you how he's made theater and improv relevant to the workplace. I have a great book that's been out for a while now called Inspired Living. Assemble the puzzle of your calling by mastering your time, your talent, and your treasures. You can find out more about that book over at inspiredlivingbook.com. It'll take you to a page where there's information and you can sign up to get some mailings about it as well as purchase a copy there. I'd love to see you get a copy and share with me how it impacted your world. Andrew Davies is the Better Meetings Director of Artly Working, which uses improv and theater to help build stronger teams made up of happier people and higher performers. Since starting in 2019, Artly Working has led programs with over 100 innovative companies like Netflix, Roblox, Meta, and Google. With training in improvisation from the Magnet Theater and facilitation from Georgetown University, Andrew is passionate about bringing those skills to strengthen company culture and people experience. His Better Meetings workshop helps teams to gather with purpose and play, designing and facilitating more effective meetings that people actually want to attend. Andrew has won several awards for his groundbreaking work, including the Young Pioneer Award from the Jewish Education Project and the Pomegranate Prize from the Covenant Foundation. Andrew is also the co-founder of Carrick Tours, theatrical walking tours where the past visits you and the Bible Players, a Jewish comedy team. When Andrew's not working, he can be found making up songs with his toddlers, bike riding around Philadelphia, or leading a free tennis camp in the neighborhood. Welcome to the show, Andrew.
Thanks so much for having me, Scott. Glad to be here.
Absolutely. So I talked a little bit in the intro about some of the work you do over at Artly Working and around improv. And of course, immediately, I think everybody's going to have certain pictures that come to mind, when they hear improv. My favorite show on the planet, the Whose Line Is It Anyway, right? That's the picture that I think for a lot of people at least comes to mind. And yet I think given that this has kind of been your journey and where you've ended up, I think the end of the story, the destination, is never the most interesting part. So take us back in time a little bit and share a little bit about your journey and what's brought you to the work where this is the work you feel called to do right now.
Yeah, it's been a long, wonderful journey with performing and with improv and theater. And I think feeling that an artist can be someone that brings more joy and laughter and connection into the world. And I think that took me a long time. My performance journey started really as a kid. I remember in 5th grade, our teacher put on Fiddler on the Roof. And there were no auditions. The casting process was she gave us each a note card and she said, write on the note card your name and if you want a big part or a small part and singing or non-singing. And I paused and thought about it and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go for it. Big part singing. And I got to be Tevye, the lead, the father in Fiddler on the Roof. And I'm still convinced to this day that I was the only boy that put singing, big part singing, and that's why I got it. But it's a lesson I always take because I think showing up is so much of the battle in life, and showing up on stage or in any space means so much. And I loved that. And in high school, I really had an incredible theater teacher who we did musicals with. The Music Man was the first musical I did in high school. And he would always tell us to just give it 110%. He would say, if when you get off the stage, you don't feel like you have to vomit, you weren't working hard enough on stage. And he was only half joking.
Just don't do that on stage.
Just don't do it on stage. And so I really took that seriously, even though I was salesman number 5 in that show. I wasn't the lead, but he made us all really feel like we had to give it 100%. And so after college, I moved to New York City. I found improvisation formal studied at the Magnet Theater, where we studied what's called long form improvisation, where you get a suggestion or an idea and you make up a 30-minute show or 40-minute show from that one word. And it was just so wonderful and beautiful at feeling connected to my teammates, creating something magical together. It really felt like the magic of the human mind. And, it's been a feeling that I've wanted to share with folks. And really, my mission in life is for everyone to have improv as something that they want to try and as a tool in their tool belt, because I just think it's so powerful personally for our communities and just in how we operate in the world.
So just for the person that maybe this is the first time they're hearing the word, tell folks in a sentence or two, when you say improv, what do you mean?
Yeah. So improv is, coming from improvising, making things up. And in my context, improv is creating an spontaneous performance based on a suggestion and just building off each other's ideas. So improv is really just about being in the moment and creating something up from scratch.
Okay. And it dawned on me as we're sitting there digging into it. I'm like, there's probably at least one person out there that's going, improv? What the heck is that?
Yeah. No, for sure. No, we're assuming.
I got to go back to the kid. Here you have this moment where, what the heck? Big part singing. I'm going to do it. Most people, they talk about how most people have a fear of public speaking. You have a fear of performing. You don't like to get in front of a crowd. I think the old surveys, and I have no idea if this is even true or not. What is one of these things I should look up one day? Is that more people are afraid of public speaking than they are of death. That in other words, they'd rather be in the coffin than delivering the eulogy. Right? I think is what everyone says. And yet here you are as a young kid, putting down, big part. Do you think, did you not have the fear, or what was different in your mind, or was it the same? Explain that,
Yeah. I think I still wrestle with fear, as everyone does. I think it was really a moment that stands out because it was a moment that I kind of overcame that fear and wrote it down. Even in the performances later and in the programs, there were nights that I remember being scared of this or that. But I think, so much of life is about doing it even though you're afraid and not, waiting until you're not afraid. And I do think there's an element of being a kid where you have less fear, I think there are a lot of ways. I think about if you ever go to like a ski slope, you'll see a 7-year-old just going down the mountain, not afraid. And you'll see a 30-year-old or a 50-year-old just like shaking in their boots and like trying to figure out what to do. And they're overthinking it. In some ways, fear is natural, but also in some things like a social setting, it's kind of learned. It's learned because we get more afraid of messing up than we do excited about doing something fun. So in my work with improv, I work with Artly Working in the workplace. I also have a group called the Bible Players, where we do a lot of Jewish education and improv comedy with Jewish groups. And we work with a lot of kids. And when I ask for volunteers in audiences of elementary schoolers, every hand goes up when I ask for volunteer. Almost every hand goes up. With adults, I don't even ask for volunteer. I'm just like, Scott, come on up. You're playing the next game, right?
Yeah.
Because I know that if I asked, no one would raise their hand.
Everyone
right?
will look at everybody else like, hey, wait, who's
Exactly. And it's hard for me to see, but I know that it's just those learned experience from adults of feeling like them messing up or making a fool of themselves is more on their mind than, oh, I get to play the game. Whereas every kid in the room is like, oh, I want to be in the game. I want to play. I want to be the star. Right. But as adults, we're like, nah, I'd rather not be the star, because if I'm the star, then I might look foolish. I might mess up. And so I think I sometimes say we have to treat like adults more like kids and kids more like adults. And this is what I think about, that we need to like, as adults, we need to find that playfulness and that fearlessness that a lot of us had when we were kids.
Well, and I think it is, because I've talked to people about it. And I think the fear of public speaking, as an example, is really more about the fear of being socially killed.
Yeah.
You are in fear for your life, but it's not like, and that's what it feels like, but it's not like, oh, I'm afraid I'm going to get eaten by a lion. It's, I'm afraid I'm going to embarrass myself and no one's going to like me anymore. And they're not going to talk to me, and they're not going to be treating me well. And, all of those things. And it's a social death instead of a physical death, but it still feels like, it feels like I'm going to get eaten by a lion. Your body doesn't know any difference between those two things. But then remembering that, like, for instance, I tell people, and I've done a little bit of improv and over the years, is I'm like, have you ever been to a show, like theater or something like that? Well, yeah. And I'm like, and were you sitting there the whole time going, boy, I really hope they screw up. I can't wait till they mess up so I can boo. They're like, no. And I'm like, neither is anyone when they're watching you. It's like, they're on your side. They want you to succeed. They're actually, they're rooting for you. They're not, they're not waiting for the chance for you to mess up. And yet that's how we feel about it. And I think that's interesting.
Yeah.
Question. I've got 50 questions. So you talk about working and improv in the workplace, and then you also shared the Bible players that doing that. Pretty different. And yet, so what's different about doing it in those two settings, and what's the same?
Yeah, it's different in the audiences. I think, as I mentioned, with adults, there's definitely more of a warm-up period, making people feel comfortable to jump in. The first 20 minutes with adults, my main focus is on conveying to them that, like, this is going to be fun. This is going to be a safe space. This is going to be great. We need to warm ourselves up a little bit, whereas kids are ready to play at the drop of a hat, right? Like, they hear the recess bell and they are off to play. When we arrive, we're ready to go. I think, the other thing about the different work is just it's really the vocabulary we use to get at some of the same values, right? So with adults, I might talk about, the team dynamics and the message that we're sending in our team if we're not speaking up, if we're not participating and jumping in and improvising and supporting each other. With kids, I might more talk about it in values, like in Hebrew, the word is chesed, in English, like kindness or loving kindness. Like, how do we show kindness to people? How do people know our kindness? And what I always say is, like, the greatest gift we can give each other is our support and our attention, right? Like, I think especially around the time of year, around like Christmas, Hanukkah, and December, people are giving a lot of physical gifts, but really the best gift we all can give each other is not physical at all, right? It's about our attention, our love, our support. So it's just attacking some of those values on different levels. But honestly, a lot of the activities, a lot of the games, a lot of the modalities are the same. It's really the same approach, but it's framing it in a different way so that they see the value of it and they can take something away from it, right? So a lot of my work is about helping people to play and jump into improv and then step back and say, how did that feel? What did I notice? What can I take away from that experience? So when you were talking about how folks really feel put on the spot, terrified of public speaking, right? It feels like you're being eaten by a lion. It really feels like that. So one of the things I love about improv and in the workplace for folks is that it feels really high stakes, but it's actually very low stakes. So that it feels like this is life or death situation, whether we can pull off this scene about a a clown who's going to dental school, whatever the scene is. But really, it's very low stakes. Everyone's rooting for you. Nobody cares if you mess up. So then in the workplace, when you get to a situation like, let's say, a meeting, a full staff meeting or a presentation for a client, and you're really feeling like this is high stakes, I'm nervous, you've already had practice being in those high stakes feeling in that improv. So you can recognize, I'm going to be okay. I know I get these butterflies, but I'm going to be okay. And so that's so important. That's a big part of it.
Yeah. And I think, too, it teaches you, or at least this was my experience with improv, it teaches you how when there is a mistake, because there will be, it's not the mistake that matters. It's what do you do right after the mistake? How do you re-engage and keep moving forward and keep things going is much more important and much more the focus of attention than, oh, Scott just screwed up. For you and for everybody else as a team, it's more like, oh, wait, we've got to keep this going. How do we recover?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think in that context with kids, with adults as well, you're never alone, right? You feel alone, you feel on the spot. But when you make a mistake, Scott, when I make a mistake, there's people back us up and people want to support each other. And if that's the environment, then any one person's mistake isn't consequential because everyone else will back them up and support them.
How can we jump in and keep things going and keep it moving or recover as we go forward? And it's even where the attention is, because again, it's not the attention's not on the person that made the mistake. The attention's not even on what was the mistake. The attention becomes very quickly, especially in a group that's been working together. Oh, wait, how do we keep this going? How do we recover? What do we do? To keep moving forward. You've mentioned a couple of times, doing the work with the Bible players and around the Jewish faith and teaching those values. One of the questions that I like to ask everybody is how your particular faith journey, whatever it is, has intersected and kind of fed into your life journey, and then vice versa. How does your life journey feed back into your faith journey? So would you share a little bit about how that's played out for you?
Yeah. So I was raised in a, observant Jewish household. My mother grew up Orthodox Jewish and raised us keeping kosher. We had two sets of dishes, milk and meat dishes and things like that. And always were home on Friday night doing Sabbath, doing Shabbat dinner. And I went to Jewish school. And I think what really I felt connected with in my Jewish faith is the approach to community and the approach to conversation and reading and ethical thinking. So the history of the rabbis really grappling with how do we be good people? How do we make a good community? How do we treat each other well? And when I got out into the kind of world after college, I think I was doing a lot of theater and a lot of performing, a lot of arts. And then I ended up doing some Jewish education and teaching in spaces. And I found that my Jewish values I carried with me everywhere and in the artistic work that I did. And I found that my improv studies brought me back to a lot of my Jewish values as well, in terms of these ideas of like building community, listening to each other, doing tikkun olam, repairing the world is a Jewish phrase. And these are all like great ideas, but the how we do them in the real world with the foibles of human beings felt so hard. And so I think improv for me made a really tangible way to practice values. Like I always felt like if out in the real world, we could operate with the values of improv of like having each other's back, supporting each other, putting the team before ourselves, the collective mind, problem solving, that the world could be such a better place. And so I think a lot of my work has been integrating and feeling connected to those Jewish values and the values of theater and improv and how they speak to each other.
So I've mentioned a couple of times that I've studied improv, and a good friend of mine, he passed away a few years ago from a brain tumor, but he was one of the best coaches I've ever met. And I was blessed to get to learn a lot from him and engage with him. And he was huge into improv. And he and I used to geek out and play like on calls where we were training other coaches. and talk about how we both felt like the little bit of improv training that we did helped us when it came to coaching and this sort of relationship with people. And I think I don't think you'd give me any argument, on that.
Yeah.
But talk a little bit about how, even beyond just the quote workplace, and we can dive some into the workplace part too,
Sure.
but just in terms of communication and relationship, how do you think improv helps in those sorts of just living your life kind of values, or moments?
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't surprise me at all that it was helpful in coaching or has been helpful in coaching doing a little bit of improv. And I think the number one skill that I tell folks that you're working on with improv is being a better listener, right? And being a better listener is one of those things that at one time feels obvious and simple and also is extremely hard, right? It's extremely hard to actually be a great active listener. And the reason improv is the best way to practice is because if you're improvising with other folks and someone stops listening, even for 10 seconds, it is so obvious to everyone, right? Right? Like we're having this conversation right now, Scott, right? Or if folks listening are having a conversation at the dinner table, if they zoned out for 30 seconds and went off into their own world and then came back, the other person might not really ever know. It might be kind of unaware. They might be able to hide it. You might be able to sort of like hide your attention or just pick up on the last thing they said and jump back in. When you're improvising and you're creating everything from scratch, if you miss anything, it just kind of all falls apart. It requires a level of focus and listening to build because you're kind of desperately seeking for little nuggets of humor or connection to build on. And so I think when you start to exercise that muscle, it's so helpful in all your relationships and all your conversations because you really just start to notice what people are saying, their tone change, a word that they said that they picked out. And in something like coaching or in the workplace or in a family relationship, you might just really be attuned in and notice like you said something I haven't heard you say before. Like you used this word that really jumped out at me. And that level of listening is a superpower that we can all acquire, but it requires a lot of practice. And improv is the most fun way to practice, right? Like I'm sure like therapists become amazing listeners sitting for hours listening to people's things and bless the work that they do. To me, that sounds exhausting, right? But to play improv games for 2 hours is energizing and fun and is making me laugh, but is practicing those skills in a really tangible way.
Well, I think coaching, even, good coaches, at least, not everybody that's a coach is a good coach, but good coaches, at least that have been doing it a while, I think become better listeners in part. But I just argue that go take, kind of like you, it's like, go take some improv classes for a while. A, you'll have fun. And B, you'll get better quick. It's kind of it's a speed lesson. It's like, because I don't know, just one performance of improv, to me at least, already starts to make your mind work differently. I think it's faster for whatever reason. I don't know if it's because it being fun lowers the barriers or it's more intense or whatever, but yeah.
Yeah, I think you're willing to step a little bit more out of your comfort zone because it's so much fun, because you want to try it, right? And I think one of those things, again, as adults that we don't do enough is we underestimate the power of fun. And if something's fun, how we'll come back to it, right? Like I'm a big fan of Freakonomics. I don't know if you've read their books, the authors, Stephen Levitt, Stephen Dubner. And one of the things they evaluate is what's the best form of exercise, right? Is it swimming? Is it weightlifting? Is it running? And they're basically like the best form of exercise is the one that you will do, right? That is the best. So there isn't actually the same best form of exercise for Scott and Andrew and whoever's listening. It's about figuring out what's fun for you. Oh, I get so much joy from my daily bike ride down the path. That's my form of exercise. Or I love my Zumba class, or I love my weightlifting to my dance music, whatever it is, it's got to be fun for you to practice. So I think too often we try and tell ourselves, I've got to do this even though I hate it, rather than asking ourselves, how could I make this fun? Like what would make, cleaning up fun? For me, I was just discovering I was sharing with you, I have 2 toddlers. I have a 2 and a 4-year-old as we're recording right now. And I'm just like constantly cleaning up their stuff and trying to figure out like how to make that fun. So I've started with them picking a dance song that I know they love. And I'm like, how much can we clean up by the end of this song? Like one song. And if we make it a game, it just becomes more fun for me, more fun for them. And if we can do that for ourselves, it's such a gift. And improv is just a gift of making these life skills a fun game that we want to come back to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think, and I do think fun. I think of it, I talk about things in terms of friction and smoothness, but fun is a form of smoothness, which is, what can I do to make the things that I need to do more smooth, create less friction, and create friction around the stuff I don't want to do, whatever that is. And if you do your life like that, you discover that, because you can get a certain amount done by just sucking it up and pulling up on your bootstraps and willpowering and, I'm going to gut my way through it. But boy, that runs out, at least for me, that my energy for that runs out pretty darn quick.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's when we beat ourselves up and we see other people doing a million things and we're like, how do they do that? They just have so much grit and determination. And then if you talk to them, they're like, oh, here's how I make it. I love that phrase, like friction or smooth. Like, here's how I make it smooth for myself. Like I lay out my clothes the night before, right. A greatest gift that a friend gave me is that my breakfast, like 90% of the time, is overnight oats that I made last night. And it's so easy, so good. And it's just like a gift to tomorrow, Andrew, where it's like I wake up, I got my breakfast ready to go. In terms of that, it's smooth. It makes it easy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And helps keep other things smooth, Yeah.
People joke about, like Steve Jobs always wearing the black turtleneck and jeans. Right. And it's like, and his comment when somebody asked him that one time is he's like, that's what I own. And that way I don't have to spend any energy deciding what to wear. I just, I got a closet full of black turtlenecks and jeans, it's like,
easy. Yeah.
And if no decision making, I just pull them out of the closet and put them on. And I think sometimes people, and then that leaves energy for doing those other things, like active listening and engaging with people and all of that other stuff, because you're not burning energy. For the first 30 minutes of the day, you're trying to figure out, what do I want for breakfast or whatever. Right. Yeah, that's awesome. What other thought that crossed my mind? I was talking to another podcaster a few months ago, and they were fairly new to podcasting. And one of the things I told them is, whether it's an audio podcast, video podcast, all of these different things and everything, that when you're talking on a podcast, whether you're a guest, whether you're the host, you've got to turn your energy up to 11 was how I put it. You've got to give more oomph to it so that people can pick up on the energy. And I see that again a little bit with skills that improv teaches us in terms of flipping it around, as well as teaching you to be a good listener. I think it also teaches you how to put energy out in a different way that is more intentional and obvious to people. Can you talk a little bit about that side of the equation that you've seen from folks in improv?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, especially in the workplace, I see challenges with energy, right? And people coming down. And so one of the improv games that's my favorite is called Speech, and where we get in a circle and we take turns coming in the middle, and the person in the middle has to say, I am sick and tired of, and then they pause and someone else shouts out, bananas, trees, clouds. And they have to give us 3 reasons why they're sick and tired of that with like full intensity. Like it's the thing they believe in the most. And I love doing that activity because folks see how much fun it is to have that high energy, to have strong opinions, even about something silly like bananas, like why they're so tired of bananas. And also how contagious that energy is with the group, right? So the first couple folks, they kind of start slowly and they get warmed up. But by the 5th or 6th person, like everyone is just like rolling with energy. And seeing that contagiousness is so important, so powerful, because again, we forget in these workspaces how contagious and important that energy is. And we'll have like a 2-hour meeting. And at no point during the meeting will someone be like, can we just stand up and like move our arms around a little bit? Can we have like a 3-minute dance party? Like, can we move around? And our ideas suffer, our work suffers, like our morale suffers. And so I think improv is a great way to capitalize on that energy and really remind people how much energy they have and remind them how much creativity they have. Like folks just forget how creative and amazing they are because sometimes our day-to-day lives put us into a box and don't invite us to just like be creative and silly. I think one of the greatest gifts of having kids for me is that my creativity is in constant demand and my kids are constantly ready to be silly. But I think in the workplace amongst adults, again, it's that like we feel weird putting ourselves out there, just like making up a song in the coffee room or something, right? But if we do, we get energized, other people get energized. It helps a lot. So that improv, that's the communal part of improv that I think helps spread that energy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, and again, having been in leadership positions and leading large teams of people, I think good leaders realize very quickly that the energy of the team is contagious.
Yeah.
It's because you can see a team go negative real quick if you've got one or two people that have that energy and start feeding into, all they ever do is talk about how everything is bad, and how everything is wrong. And it's like pretty soon everybody's doing that, that kind of thing. So it's the same sort of idea. So I've got a few questions that I want to ask all of my guests. But before I go there, is there anything else about improv or the work you do in the workplace or with the Bible players that you'd like to share with the listener?
Yeah, I mean, I think, one key idea that we've danced around a little bit, but I think is so important for all of this is if folks are listening, I just invite them to think about if they're inviting people to participate, to join in. I think so much, if I had a pet peeve I had to share, is how often we think about things as frontal presenting and then listening and presenting and then listening. Whereas what's beautiful about improv is that everyone is able to participate in any given moment. And so for me, that's such an important metric that I use to evaluate my own work and other people's work is, are you inviting the people around you to participate, be a part of it? Or are you expecting them to silently listen for a while you talk and then them talk and you listen, but is it participatory? So I think I just want to introduce that because I feel like that is a really important framework to look at things and think about, are we doing well or not? For me, that's my main question. Yeah.
And I think, for that, if you want help with that and want an environment where you will be forced to do it, go teach math to middle schoolers.
Yes.
Yeah, because they will interrupt you. Halfway through the lesson, they'll ask you why your shoes are blue. They have no problem doing it. I was a middle school teacher for 11 years, so trust me, I did
still traumatized.
Science.
Yeah. Okay.
But you get good at dealing with. Okay, we've got to keep this interesting. We've got to keep it moving. We've got to keep them engaged and active. And if all I do is lecture at the front of the room and they passively listen, I'm blessed if they fall asleep because at least then they're not bothering you.
Right.
But that's usually not what they're going to do.
Right.
They're usually going to make you pay for it.
That's right. Yeah.
So my brand is Inspired Stewardship, and I kind of run things through that lens of stewardship. And yet I've discovered over the years that that's one of those words that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So for you, what does the word stewardship mean to you?
Yeah, when I think about the word stewardship, I think about the world and the environment in which we live and how it's been taken care of for us and how we can take care of it for others. And a lot of my work I think about as trying to be a positive steward of the communities and the relationships that I've grown into and being a positive steward going forward. I really think about it with my family and how much I appreciate the faith traditions of my family, the holidays that we get together in those traditions, and trying to be a steward of those to my kids and to the next generation. And so I think about it on that personal level of the people in my life that have passed down traditions and the people in my life who I want to pass down traditions to.
So this is my favorite question that I like to ask everybody. Imagine for a moment that I could invent this magic machine. And with this machine, I was able to take you from where you sit today and transport you into the future, maybe 150, maybe 250 years. But through the power of this machine, you were able to look back and see your entire life, see all of the connections, all of the ripples, all of the impacts you've left. What impact do you hope you've left in the world?
I hope when looking back in my life that the world is a little bit happier, a little bit sillier, a little bit more playful. When I think about the way we treat each other day to day, the folks in our lives that help people find space for play every day and find space for laughter every day, and hope I bring a bit more of that into the world. And I hope everybody's riding bikes, because I love that as well. So I hope that it's already the most popular form of transportation in the world, but in the US, it doesn't always feel like it. So I hope when I look back at the US that it's safe to bike everywhere and everybody's biking around and laughing all the time.
So I'm a native Texan. So most places that I have to go to in Texas, biking might be a bit much.
I know it's I know it's spread out, it's far apart, and the trucks are too big. You're scared of biking, but that's what I mean.
It's a little dangerous in my state, but I do like biking. I enjoy Portland because you can walk and bike everywhere. So there are parts of the country where I wish more people would bike. I'm not sure if Texas is ready for that yet.
Yeah, certain seasons. Half my family's down there. My dad's from Texas, so
when it's 120 degrees, you don't want to go outdoors much. Like
exactly. Yeah, for sure.
So what's coming next? What's on the roadmap for you as you continue on your journey this year?
Yeah, so I'm working on my first book, which I'm really excited about, and I've been sharing some pieces of it this year. And the working title is Participate, and it's a guide from personal courage to community change. And the hope is to really exploring improv and different ways of building connection amongst groups to help us to kind of like overcome our own fears, to have everybody put down big part singing and like sign up for things in that way. And to also see the opportunities to build their communities more intentionally, whether it's their nuclear family or their neighborhood or their workplace, to really see those tools to help everyone participate and be a part of it. So I'm really excited working on that and sharing that, and and continuing to share all these tools with communities, with Artley Working, with the Bible players, and continuing to work that way.
Awesome. So you can find out more about Andrew over at artleyworking.com. Of course, I'll put a link to that over in the show notes as well, in case you're driving or can't find it right now. Andrew, what else would you like to share with the listener?
My favorite story about improvising, which some folks might know, but I love, is about Martin Luther King Jr. and how his most famous speech, I Have a Dream, was in some ways improvised. He showed up with his script and his speech that day, and it was all about a promissory note that America's written and it hasn't cashed, and it wasn't really landing. It wasn't his best performance. And Mahalia Jackson, who was a singer that worked with him, shouted out, like, "Tell him about the dream, Martin." And she had heard versions of the I Have a Dream speech in churches. And in that moment, he decided to improvise and pivot and shared what's now one of the most iconic speeches in American history, this I Have a Dream speech. And so I like to share that with folks, because when folks think about improv, sometimes they think it's sort of frivolous and like, when will I use that in real life? And so if I feel like if it's good enough for, perhaps the greatest orator in American history, I think we can all do with a little improvising as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I had never heard that. So Thank you. That's a new story that I'll have to put in the story toolbox, because I like that one.
For sure.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for listening to the Inspired Stewardship podcast. As a subscriber and listener, we challenge you to not just sit back and passively listen, but act on what you've heard and find a way to live your calling. If you enjoyed this episode, please do us a favor. Go over to inspiredstewardship.com/iTunes rate, all one word, iTunes rate. It'll take you through how to leave a rating and review, and how to make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so that you can get every episode as it comes out in your feed. Until next time, invest your time, your talent, and your treasures. Develop your influence and impact the world.